All right, good afternoon. My name is Andrea Cumpston, and I'm with the Enterprise Wireless Alliance. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar, Using the Wireless System Investment Model. Before we get going, I'd like to walk through some housekeeping matters. Right now, your phones are on mute. We did that so that everybody can have a pleasant listening experience during the webinar. And however, we still want to hear from you. If you have a question during the proceedings of the webinar, please use the chat box, which is at the bottom left corner of your screen, to enter a question, send it to us, and we'll be able to address all of those at the end of the webinar. In addition, when we finish with the presentation, we'll unmute the lines, and we can take your questions at that time. But if you don't want to wait, you want to send a question immediately, use chat. If you'd like to wait until the end, we'll unmute the phones and we can have a conversation. If you lose your internet connection, reconnect please using the link that was mailed to you in your email confirmation. If you need tech support with ReadyTalk, which is the service that we use for this webinar, that phone number is the last line of this slide. It's 800-843-9166. With that, I'm going to turn you over to today's speaker. I'm going to introduce Sarah Bierbauer, who's Executive Director of Membership and Marketing for the Enterprise Wireless Alliance. Take it away, Sarah.
Thank you, Andrea. As Andrea mentioned, we want to make this webinar great and to have a good listening experience, but as she said, if you have any questions along the way, please utilize the chat. I want to also note that Mark Crosby, President of EWA, and David Reeves, President of P&R Communications, are joining me for today's webinar, so thank you both for being here. We're going to start off by just simply going through today's agenda. First off, we're going to talk about, welcoming everybody, which I just did, and then go through what the tool is. So we're going to hear from Mark a little bit about why the tool was created, how you can use it, who should be using it. Go a little bit more into how it should be used. I'm going to walk you through some screenshots of a demo, and then I will also at the end do a brief live view of the tool so you can see in real time how it's used and how it can be altered with the data that's inputted. And we're also going to hear from David Reeves, who was one of our beta testers with the tool, and in fact started off at the very beginning of this with helping us come up with what information should be used for it, testing it out with his staff, has been utilizing it, and he can give a little bit of feedback about how they're doing those things and the advantages they've seen from it. At the very end, I'm going to talk a little about some other collateral that EWA has created that is free for people to download off our website that is value added to this tool, and it complements the tool. And where you can find that. And then as Andrea mentioned, we'll open for questions. We'll open the whole line for questions at the end. If there is a specific slide as we're going through and you have a question about a specific field or a specific slide, feel free to put that in the chat as we go. So next I'm going to turn this over to Mark Crosby, and he can give you a little bit of background about the tool itself.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to all of our members and friends that are on the call this afternoon. EWA is constantly strives. We're very proud of our members, but we constantly strive to create and make available to our members services that can help them, when they're involved in wireless communication decisions or spectrum matters or whatever. But one of the tools that we've constantly been asked for, or were constantly asked over the years, was, boy, it would be great if we had a spreadsheet that could help us, predict and define the costs, the operational costs, the capital costs for the three basic ways in which we can accommodate our wireless communication needs. And of course, that's a commercial carrier, private carrier, or a private internal system. And so we developed this model. It took a while. I knew enough to be dangerous, but I knew I didn't have everything. And so we called upon David Reeves and actually Frank Anderson to help us finalize all of the cost components that go in, the CapEx and the OpEx expenditures and all of the costs that are associated with investing in either a commercial or private carrier or a private system. And we think we have an exceptional tool that can be used by our members, whether you are selling those three options to consumers, public safety, business, industrial, or you are yourself a private, business enterprise, and said, I don't know whether I should use it. I need 20 phones or 20 devices. I have 500. Listen, this is a very sophisticated, very complete model that we've crafted. I can't imagine we're missing a cost element with the input from David and Frank, and it's all in there. It's iterative. It's easy to use, and we're very proud of the tool we've created, this service. And I think the other benefit that we try to achieve is, for sure, there are other wireless system investment prediction models out there, but this one's EWAs, and it doesn't matter, whether you say it doesn't matter the vendor, doesn't matter the apps, doesn't matter what. This is benign, so it's not skewed one way or another to one. It encompasses all technologies, all options, all costs, all applications, analog, digital, trunked, conventional. It captures it all. And so I think our members can use it with confidence that it's a very reliable and an excellent tool to determine relative costs when you're making a wireless communication system investment decision. So we're glad we have it, and we only make it available to members, which is because our members deserve it, and so we love the tool, and so we'll now turn it over to Sarah, who will go through some of the details of this. So again, thanks for being on a call, and we're glad to introduce, if you haven't used it already, this service.
Thanks, Mark. I wanted to let everyone know we're going to start off by walking through where you can find access to the tool, how the login works, and just some of those basics. Along the way, as I do the screenshots like this one, these are all going to be static, so we're not live right now, but I wanted to make sure you guys could see details of these. David Reeves, who's on the call as well, as I mentioned, from P&R Communications, he is going to offer some commentary so that you guys can understand a little bit about how he and his staff are using it just as I walk through. So David, feel free to interrupt me and jump in at any time that you would like as we go through this.
Okay.
So right here, I want to make sure everyone can see, I've put some arrows on there, but I also have my pointer. This is the Wireless System Comparison Tools link. It is most easily found just on our home page when you go to enterprisewireless.org. You would click here, and it'll take you directly to the login screen. I'm sorry, it'll take you to the first screen. The login is up here if you already have access to the tool. So if you've already, Mark mentioned you have to be a member to have access. Members, this is available for $300 a month. If you are a Premier member, it is included with your membership. Premier members are already granted access, so you would be able to just click on this link and you should be able to get right in as long as you are part of your membership roster. If you do not have access yet and you're asking to grant access, there's a form on the side here you would simply fill out with your information, hit submit, and somebody from EWA's membership department will get in touch with you. They'll look at your membership status and either let you know the pricing just to access the tool, give you options for Premier subscription, or send you a bundle package if you're not a member so that you have all the information at your fingertips about how to get involved. Next, it'll take you to that login screen, as I mentioned, when you click that first link at the top. In here, you'll simply put in the same login information that you use across EWA's website. So for those of you that are already using SIVO, this would be your SIVO login, SIVO password. For those of you who are not using SIVO, you can go ahead and click the register button and register in here. It'll take you to a screen. If at any time you forgot your password, just click here. You can reset your password. So once you've logged in, there's a couple things on this screen that I want to point out. Number one, up here at the top, you'll have the options to save and to reset. We'll get into that a little bit more as we work through this. The top thing it's going to ask you, this top field, is a scenario name. Now, as Mark mentioned, this can be used either by a wireless sales and service provider who's talking with their customers. So in this line, you can put anything from Douglas County Sheriff's Department. You could put, you know, the Walmart in town. You could put Caesars. You could put whatever your customer's name is. If you are the licensee, and this is a scenario that you're doing for yourself, you know, you could name this, you know, scenario number 1 or number 2 if you're trying to run different information, or maybe it's specific for a, you know, certain location for your company. So feel free to customize that as you want. Whatever you type in there, you'll see it comes through as you go through the form and show up in different areas. Down here is where you select which type of systems that you're wanting to compare. As Mark mentioned, we're looking at a commercial cellular service, private carrier, or a private internal with building, having your own two-way radio network. So right here you select, if you want to compare all three, click all three, and it'll ask you questions as you've moved through the model that are applicable to all three.
Yeah,
if you only want to look at...
Sarah, what
Yep.
this basically does is allows you to set up 3 different solutions from 3 different providers. A commercial carrier we're calling basically a cellular type solution. A private carrier would be like a community repeater or a Connect Plus network type solution. And then the final one would be an on-site solution, which you would be the owner of the complete system. So those are the 3 scenarios, or the 3 different options within the scenario. So the top line where you put the scenario, you can compare 1, 2, or all 3 of these different options in one time.
And I think,
But it's very, this is Mark. But it's very iterative. You can, I mean, you build the wireless system as you go through this model.
Right. And I would say too, to mention, I know that when other people have used this, that they'll select all 3, or they might even just have 1 because they're just wanting to see output of what that one scenario would be. But you'll see as we move through how that works. So.
That's a good point, Sarah. You can just check one box if you just want to look at the total cost of ownership, for instance, for one particular solution, because it will run through all the numbers for a 10-year look for a total cost of ownership for any one. So you can just run one at a time if all you want to do is get the total cost of ownership of what you're proposing, rather than comparing anything.
Right. Okay, good. So after you select which systems you're wanting to compare, you'll scroll down on the screen and it'll start asking you some basic questions. There's 9 general data points that we've identified, no matter which of the systems you're trying to compare, that these will be the same 9 data points. So you'll start off by filling in that information. Then as you scroll down, you will see right here, it will appear with which systems you're trying to compare. So for this example, we had all 3 selected. On here, it's right now on commercial. You can see the data points associated with commercial. We would scroll down to see more, but I'm going to show you the next slide, which would be private carrier. You would simply click right here to access private carrier, and it'll ask you questions that are specific to that model. And then if you clicked on private internal, it would take you to that next model.
Yeah.
You have to ensure that you're...
I was going to say that the first set of variables are generically the same for all 3 comparisons. That's the how many units do you want and those sort of items. Then the next one gets down to the specifics of the specific solution you're looking at, which are different from solution to solution, the cost factors. So there's 2 different sets of data really. There's one that's generic for everything, and then the other one's by the solution.
For example, if you're going to get 100 units from a national cellular carrier, you're not going to have any cost for towers. Mm-hmm. If you have your own on-site system, there's going to be a cost for a tower, one way or another. You're going to put it up yourself, or you're going to lease space somewhere. So that cost element would be for an on-site private system, but not on a commercial. So again, this is very detailed and very, and the data points or the financial data points are applicable for those 3 types of, or unique to those 3 types of solutions.
Right. So when you've worked all the way through this and you have information, you have to make sure that you click on each of these. I just want to point that out. So if you're trying to compare all 3, to Mark and David's points, the general questions were at the top, but you need to make sure that you click on each of these to make sure that you are putting in the data specific to the system. You'll simply scroll down after that. There's a save button here at the bottom. There was also one at the top. Once you hit save, even if you log out of the model, close your browser, go to lunch, you can log back in and any of the data that you had entered will save. So that's important to note. If you are working on this and you might need to gather more information, click Save. You can log back into that to this model. You'll have this exact same screen for that scenario that you named at the beginning, and you can edit and alter the information. We'll show you a little bit more about that later, but just make sure you hit the Save button. Once you do hit Save, though, it's going to take you to a screen that will give you the output. Now, as Mark spoke about, we took a lot of accounts into factor by creating this. Dembo Jones helped us quite a bit with looking at the cost factors. Our beta testers, David Reeves and Frank Anderson. There are more than 75 expense data points that are being calculated when you hit that Save button. These are just a few of them. I wanted to be able to offer this as an example. When you're using this tool, if at any point, though, that you're thinking, man, we really like to account for this and that's not on this tool, please let us know. This is our, our launch of it, but with any good software, any good system, there's updates made along the way and improvements made along the way. So if there are items that you think we can do to make this better, please reach out to us. So once you hit that Save button, all the data is computed. You're going to be taken to a screen that looks like this. Now this is your basic online version of the Excel spreadsheet that we use to compute. So you'll be able to see all of the data in very much detail. I want to start up here at the top on how to read this. So right here when I said personalize this field with your customer's name, had you put Douglas County Sheriff's Department, that's where that would show up. So you would know specifically that you're looking at the correct proposal, the correct analysis for the customer that you entered. It will start off at the top. It'll start off at the top with the commercial system, and then as you walk through from the left to the right, the yellow fields are the data that you put in to the form that we were just in. Once you put that in, it's going to carry over all of the information throughout. So it'll take the cost for units multiplied by the number of units. As you read this, year 1, year 2, year 3, going down to the bottom, this is the cost for that first year. This is the total cost for the second year. And the second line underneath it is cumulative. So this line, keep in mind, this is the annual cost by whatever year the column is. And the second one is the cumulative expense as it builds throughout time.
This doesn't really, maybe Dave will get in more detail. Literally, you can see at the top line it has the equipment cost for units. This model will let you go, first year I'm going to have 50 units. In the third year, I'm going to add 50 more units. And in the fifth year, I'm going to replace the unit. I mean, you literally can do that with this model and these cost estimates. I mean, this model even will take in, we're going to trade in the radios and get a $100 per radio discount. You can put that in the model. We have that cost as one of the fields for the cost that offsets the acquisition cost of devices. I mean, this is, I know Sarah said, we're looking for anything we missed. Boy, I tell you, it'd be hard-pressed to figure out what we missed, but it's possible.
Well, I never say never with that one, Mark.
Yeah, I know, but, I mean, we got, I'm sitting there, I look at the folks on the call, and they're very astute wireless professionals, and, maybe I'm too optimistic. Boy, I don't know if we missed any, but maybe we did. But this is pretty sophisticated and not difficult to use.
These numbers, again, if you look to the far right at the bottom, is your total cost of ownership over 10 years. These numbers are very important to your, not to discredit, but your bean counter types, your numbers, folks that are making decisions in your larger corporations, and a lot of times they have to push it up and get it blessed. And these are what the numbers guys are looking for. These are exactly the spreadsheet types of information that they're looking for when they're going to buy something.
So that's the commercial. What's the next one?
Yep, that's the commercial. Private carrier, you can tell there's a lot more, as Mark was mentioning, that there's a lot of data depending on which systems that you're looking at. It'll be more complex. This is the private carrier, and then private internal. Couldn't get it all on one page, but what I wanted to show you with private internal and or with all three of them, then is you have this, the Excel spreadsheet, what the bean counter's like, the actual, dollar per dollar every year, cumulative, everything, and then we also had it so that it calculates the graph at the end of the day. So this is looking at the expense comparison by year. Year 1, this is what the investment was. Year 2, year 3, year 4. Colors coordinate up here with the key. Right here in year 6 is exactly what Mark was talking about when he said that you can account for, trading in, getting new
devices.
Units.
Yeah.
Yep. So there's a little bump right there because you can see that we got the new devices. This one on the bottom here is the cumulative expense by year. So, comparing, yes, the first year is going to be more expensive with private internal than with commercial. But over here, commercial ends up over time being a lot more.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sorry. With your presentation, this is a real handy tool because you can actually show people, say, for instance, you're looking at the total cost of ownership model on the bottom. In year, 5, they actually equal out, and then in year 6, it starts to go the other way as far as the commercial compared to the private internal system there. So these are really good presentation tools, the graphic representations of it. The numbers are for the guys making the money decisions.
Yeah, and one thing with this too, this is all based on, this entire model, the form that we filled out beforehand, it's all based off the numbers that you as the user are putting in here. And David will get into that here in a second. But I want to point that out because if you have different information in different fields, this graph could just, it could flip the other way possibly. So we built a calculator. 2 plus 2 is always going to equal 4. So we've built a calculator in the math. It's all about the numbers that you are putting in here. And EWA, as you know, the not-for-profit third party, wanted to be able to provide you with that tool.
Yeah, the nice part about this is it is vendor non-specific. So you can take any commercial carrier, your Verizons, your AT&Ts, whoever it might be, any manufacturer, Motorola, Tate, Nextel, anybody, or NextEdge, anything like that you can put in because it's all based on dollars and cents. It isn't based on any equipment features that are, it's all generic. So it's totally out there as an industry standard and not any specific vendor standard.
It's also neutral as to whether you're public safety, business, industrial, transportation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, you're all buying systems. And so this tool is applicable for all industry segments, critical infrastructure, public safety, but, it doesn't matter because you're all buying units, DASs, towers, et cetera. So it's perfect for all buyers in all industry, categories.
Perfect. So one quick thing, after you've run all that data, the graphs are at the bottom, you scroll back up to the top, and there are 3 tabs that I want to point out. The one that we're on is this middle one that says Model, if you can see it, in between the 2 highlighted boxes. If you want to go back, if you realize, oh, I put the wrong number of units in, I need to correct that, you would click this tab. It takes you back to the form, the scenario, where you can edit the information and the numbers. You would just hit Save again. It brings you back to this screen with updated information. We'll show you an example of that in a second. The other thing that you can do is hit this Print Model button. It is going to take you to a screen that then allows you to print it as a PDF. And I have an example here. So this model that we just ran is 7 pages total. But I did a capture of 4 of the screens here so you could see a couple items. First off, there's a little introduction about what the model is. So if you're just directly handing this to a customer or passing it along to somebody, it'll have a description about why EWA created this, what it is, and a little bit of everything you've heard today, some information to contact us if people have questions about it. Up at the top is the name of the model, then that personalized line here. So if you had your customer's name, it would go there. And then the date that you ran the model. So that helps you also if you're saving this PDF in your files that you remember, oh yeah, that was the one I did back in July in case you need to update it in August. We have information about EWA because, again, as a not-for-profit trade association, we don't have any investment in whether you make the sale or not. We are here to provide industry information and tools to help you do business better. But we want people to know that this isn't just something wacky that was drafted up. It is created by us by a recognized industry leader. So we use Nitro for this. Other people use Adobe PDF. This white space right here was left there on purpose so that you could personalize it. Either you can go in there and edit it with your sales team's contact information, or just put your company contact information in case you're just printing this off and making it available to your customers as a proposal. We also did it so that it's split up. The commercial will be just on one page with a page break here. Private carrier with a page break. And you'll see that so on and so forth. We wanted it to be printer friendly so there isn't too much carrying over into a second page. Next up, David, you've heard from him a little bit along the way with some of his commentary about how they're using it, but I wanted to make sure that he had some time to really get into how they use it, what staff are using it, and if there's differences between the way the staff use it. Some tips for how to look at the data and calculate it. I mentioned that this tool really is a calculator, 2 + 2 = 4. So if you're looking to get specific information, how they're inputting the data. And then when do you present it to a customer? Do you do it in front of them? Do you do it beforehand? So I'll turn it over to you to speak a little bit about that, David.
Okay. First of all, on the how to use it, we use it, number one, it's a great training tool. When you take your pre-sale engineers and your sales folks and they sit down together and they work through the scenarios, they can actually find out there's some pretty interesting things happen when you mess around with quantities or you mess around with different site costs and things like that. And it gives you basically the confidence in yourself knowing the solution you're selling is either the best, or sometimes it comes out it may be a little more expensive, but that's even okay too, because that difference in expense then can be attributed to the other intangibles that your solution provides that maybe the other one doesn't, like the control of the system, the survivability and reliability, the restore after the time to restore during a disaster and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of different angles to put this in, but again, I would highly recommend doing the data manipulation between your salesperson and your sales engineers, pre-sales engineers, and to have printed output to present to the customer. Since it is a tool and it does math, you don't want to sit there and fumble with numbers in front of somebody. You want to have the story to tell, and you want to have the presentation of the story to tell, not actually creating the story. So I would highly recommend you do the numbers, you run through the scenarios, you print out the results once you're final and happy with what you have, and then you include those numbers in your presentation or as a slide to your presentation to show them the total cost of ownership. And whether you want to get into comparisons or not, you may only compare 1 or 2 different options, or you may just want to have your option with the total cost of ownership rather than any comparison at all. Some tips for using it is to begin with the end in mind. That's one of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you haven't read the book yet, I highly recommend that too. But it's a 10-year tool. It's a 10-year look. So make sure you include the equipment that you're going to be selling this person for 10 years. Don't just put the first buy or the first 5 units in there and run it out 10 years. Really look at a total solution and a scalable total solution and try to include those numbers as best you can on a 10-year outlook so that they can see over the life of this scenario what it's really going to cost them rather than just what this first buy may be. Let's see. Another tip would be to play with the number of units to show the total cost of ownership and how it affects it long term. Some people may be hesitant to buy a whole lot up front, but maybe there's a difference that can provide over the 10-year lifespan that may make a big difference in buying more up front or buying more with a discount rather than buying them in piecemeal. And then the other thing is the again, how you're going to present it to the customer. I would highly recommend that you present them the printed collateral and not actually try to work the tool with them in front, because as you change numbers, things can happen and you may be surprised what happens too. So you want to go into your customer presentation with good solid numbers, good firm background so that it's something they can look at and it makes sense. You don't want to sit there and have to work over or redo any scenarios. The other part I would say is take some of these charts and some of the meaningful information and leave it as part of your presentation with the customer. Again, if you give the customer a brochure or a package with some of these hard numbers in them, that's what the accounting folks are going to eat up when they look at that 10-year cost of ownership, because that's really what they're interested in as far as it comes to making the decision on a financial side of things. And then again, my other thing for the customer is sometimes you may run this tool and maybe the other scenario would be cheaper, but as we all know, cheaper is not always best. So make sure if it isn't the cheapest solution that you sell the intangibles along with it that make it worth the extra money to do the solution that you're trying to sell, like control of the system, survivability, and reliability type things. So those are some of the things that we came up with and that we use it for.
Let me make this comment real quick. You don't need a PhD to figure this out. I mean, if I can use it and if I have the right things, I think what David said is so true, though. If you're in front of a customer and if you don't know, if you put these numbers in, because this thing happens in milliseconds. I mean, the cumulative cost, the annual cost and the cumulative 10-year costs and the graphs appear in milliseconds. So if this isn't like you have to wait for it. So that's why I think you don't want any surprises when you're doing a presentation. That said, you don't need a PhD and hours-long training to figure out how to use this thing. If you know what the cost factors are, you put in the numbers, and you go, I'm done. And in milliseconds, the cost estimates come up. And so I think that's the other benefit of this tool.
Yeah, every time you hit the save button, it actually computes and puts the new numbers that you just put in the scenario into the output. So you can fool with this thing as many times as you want, going back and changing numbers and see how that affects it. And a couple of things that maybe affects it more than others, but you may want to consider is things like your site rent costs for towers, of what site to pick to put the private systems on, or whether there is any site rent involved in a different scenario where it might be an on-site solution. So there's a lot of different things to go through when you consider that, and I would encourage you to play with those with your pre-sale engineer. And then once you're finally happy with the solution and what you've printed, print out those results and give those out hard copy out rather than try to do something right in front of the customer.
Okay.
And I hope everybody on the call can.
Let me take a step back then, since people weren't able to see this before. Let's go back to the home page just really quick. Again, the home page, clicking on wireless system comparison tools here to be able to access. Since we already have a login, clicking on this link, and as I mentioned, I'm already logged in, so it'll go ahead and just take you directly into it. This is the personalized field here. So for now, I'm just going to change this so it says, Douglas County. I'll show you how we can edit that afterwards. As we scroll down, I had all three systems selected, so all three will show up here. As David was focusing on, if you want to just do one or two, you would unselect it, and when you scroll down, it's not even going to ask you the questions about it. So it's pretty user-friendly as you work your way through. Just make sure you're clicking on the tab. All right, so we already have data inputted in here. I'm going to change that one so you guys can see the differences with the output. So we're going to have 100 handhelds for now. That's in the general question section. And everything looks good. I pre-populated it for the purposes of our webinar here. If at any point you guys, if you're using this, have questions about how much should I put for training, how much should I put for some of these things, let us know. We have some general parameters that our beta testers helped us come up with, and we're happy to be a resource for those as well. So you hit save.
You also might want to, once you've worked through a few of these scenarios, save yourself a couple of paper files of some of your best scenarios so that you have those numbers or some generic numbers that you can put in there if it's an unknown for the purpose of just starting to fool with it.
Good advice. As you can see, as soon as you hit save, in a flash, it brought all of this up. So you're scrolling through. It has all the systems that we mentioned. Douglas County is what I put as our customer up here at the top. It's today's date because that's where we're running it. If I were to save this and log back in tomorrow and go back to the scenario and hit save again and rerun it, it would update it with tomorrow's date. It's a little bit easier to see on here, but again, this is the per year expense, and these are cumulative. So if you were going to just save this as data and you're wanting to look at just the data, you could do just, over 5 years, what's the cumulative for the first 5 years, for the first 6 years, and look at it that way. As you scroll down, you'll be able to get into each one of the models. And at the bottom, you'll be able to see the graphs. Now, for the sake of this webinar, we wanted to show you how the graphs change and how the data changes based on the input. So try to keep this in mind here and the way that this looks visually for you. And I am going to go back up to the top.
Let's have fun. What's the number you're going to change? The number of units?
Yeah, so we're going to go back to the scenario, and all you have to do to go back is just hit that tab again. I'm actually going to change this now so you guys can see that the name changes.
We trust you. The handheld units, what are you going to do? Like go to 1,000 or 500 or something like that?
You want me to do 500 or you want me to do more?
500 sounds good.
500,
500
okay.
is good? Okay.
Thousands getting out of control.
Yeah, okay.
Hitting save on here. And I'm not going to focus on the dollar amounts. You'll see that those went up, obviously, compared to what we were looking at before, but I really want to get down to the visualization of this. And you can see how that just completely changes the way that the numbers pull and the way that it's graphically represented there. David, is there anything that you wanted to highlight?
Well,
I want to highlight this, the speed with which that changed. As I said, this took the results after you hit save. How long did it take?
Well,
even if you changed even if you changed 30 variables, cost variables, it would still take that same amount of time, which was a second.
Remember, this computer is sitting in a hosted server farm in Washington somewhere where there's fire-breathing dragons that run the horsepower of this thing up. So it's not even on site. It's in the cloud, but it's some pretty hefty cloud computing where this engine is sitting that computes all this stuff. But the thing that I'd like to highlight is the graphical representations here, because you could run the two graphs with the difference in unit volume, and it's a very powerful selling tool as far as cost goes when you show that to a customer. Clearly now, the commercial system is way more expensive, even though it's a lot cheaper in year one. So these are the types of things that make powerful stuff for your presentations. You can either make slides of them or put them in your information package. The graphical representations are always nice. You could show a 100-unit scenario and a 500-unit scenario, or a 100, 200, 300 scenario to try and upsell on the front end of the thing, to show them that over the long haul, it's cheaper to buy. If you're going to buy that many units, it's cheaper to go with our solution, sort of a thing. So, again, once you show this to a salesperson and you give him the graphs and the numbers, that's pretty rare meat for those guys to put something together to sell this thing. And the other nice part about it is it proves it to the salesperson, because I've always found that when your salesperson believes in what he's selling or understands what he's selling to show you, and this helps them do that, and then they sell so much better when they're so confident of their numbers, and this kind of helps reinforce that for the salesperson, because he can see all the different solutions out there, and clearly the one he's producing is the best sell.
Mark, did you have anything final on this screen?
No, other than I love the way, listen, because it's our tool, of course I love it, but you know, we got a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in this, right? Because we really wanted to come up with a really valuable service for our members. So you plug in all the data, and if you just as a reminder, the way that you saw those graphs, the numbers, the cost values that you put in are right there, so that you can look at them. So whether you're doing a presentation, wherever you go, yep, that's what that was, and the tower cost, and we had a console, and we had training. There's even a cost element in there for if you hire somebody to manage your system, right? If you have somebody on staff.
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't think we missed anything, but again, we might have.
Well,
and
clearly the big takeaway for this is that total cost of ownership thing again, and that gets to be more and more of a sticking point as budgets get tighter and tighter, and as maybe your non-traditional folks like your IT folks are making decisions on what to buy and how to buy it. They're going to look at the numbers, and they're not going to consider just what it costs up front. They want to consider what it costs over 10 years, and this is a great look into that into the future to tell them, just to illustrate what they need to do.
We probably should stop talking and
let people ask some questions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, really quickly, before we get into questions, I do want to mention, David, you had said that when the output, sometimes it may not go in your favor, but there's a lot of intangibles that people need to consider when they're looking at the different systems. So we have some value-added collateral that was created about the same time as the model. It's free for download on our website. You go to the exact same place where you go to the login. You click on the same link, on our home page, and it'll take you to the same page. You just scroll to the bottom, and you'll be able to see a place to download these. But they focus on more of the opportunity cost of the systems, the intangibles that were mentioned. So the safety, the pros and cons of safety, security, productivity with the different systems, with the different devices. So I'd encourage people to go online, download those. There's also a space on the back of those where you can customize them with your logo, maybe staple a business card or something like that too. But I wanted to make sure we mentioned those. I think we're going to go ahead and open it for questions. Andrea, do you want to go ahead and open the line here?
Yes.
I will take a quick moment before the lines open.
The conference has been unmuted.
We have a few questions that came in over chat, but I'll open it up for questions first to see if there are any duplicate questions. And I also want to mention, if you guys have any questions you'd rather ask offline, or if you need help even with the easy stuff about, I mentioned with how to edit a PDF. We may not know exactly what PDF reader you're using, but if you need some tips on how to drag your contact information onto a PDF, just let me know. I'm here to help. My email, phone number are all listed there, so jot those down. Why don't we go ahead and open it for questions? Does anybody on the call have questions, comments? All right, Andrew, do you want to start off with the chat ones that we received?
The first one that I think looks pretty good is how long does it take to produce the report, including graphs?
Yep. So we went live for a second. Hopefully everyone saw that. It was in the as fast as you can click a button. One thing I do want to mention with how long does it take to create the report. And David, you can speak to this as how long does it take to collect the data to put into it?
Right. Yeah, and some of the scenarios you'll have the data right on the top of your head because that's what you're selling. You may need to get some of the other scenarios either from the customer that's looking at it or to do a little market research and find out. But again, I would strongly suggest once you have that data or something close to that data that you keep those scenarios in a file so that you don't have to go reinvent the wheel every time you want to put one of these together.
Yep. Okay, great.
And the other question that I've got in chat is for David, and it's how many data points do you use normally?
Well, that's kind of a loaded question. On the carrier solution, we don't use any data point. We use what we call standard data points because we kind of have standard numbers for carrier solutions. We don't sell carrier solutions. As far as the other scenario, there's probably a good dozen different things in it, and it all depends because you have to know it's kind of subjective to whatever you're doing. For instance, if it's an on-site system, and they have a tall building and the repeater equipment is going to be located on the penthouse of the building, there are no tower costs. However, if it's a single-story manufacturing facility that you need to get up in the air, there may be a tower cost involved. So that may be different. Now, we have some generic numbers for tower costs, but that's not, again, a final thing, and that can get a lot more subjective. So sometimes we have tower costs, sometimes we don't. It all depends on what you're doing as to how many data points you're going to enter, but clearly you want to enter everything that's a cost variable for the particular scenario you're working with.
But I think this model is also flexible enough, David, that, as the carriers start offering and promoting push-to-talk solutions and whatever, the model is still applicable to define those costs annually and cumulatively over a 10-year period versus other solutions, either via private carrier, private networks, or private on-site system.
Yeah, and again, those carrier costs keep changing, and they also have a variable run rate on the subscriber devices and how many years they're good for till they need to be replaced or upgraded or changed. So that's kind of a moving target. But again, once you've done some of that market research, you can have what you call a generic solution and plug those numbers in for that solution. But as far as the solution that you're actually selling, it's really going to depend on what you're doing there, and then those numbers clearly probably come off the top of the head between your sales pre-sale engineer and your salesman. They can probably populate most of those numbers right off the top of their head.
But you could, for example, just never mind the vendor X, have it for your customer. If you buy model A, here's the cost. If you buy model B with these apps, here's the cost. If you buy the competition's product, we think you can do all of that with this model.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's that flexible, and I think useful for really pinning down the costs. And again, why did we do this? People go, "Oh my God, I don't even know how to start to do one of these things." This didn't take a day or two to develop. I think it took us a couple months. And with Sarah had mentioned Dembo Jones. That's an audit firm who are exceptional at Excel spreadsheets and prediction models, and we used them to help craft this specific tool. Let me see, got a call in here. Great, too, if you find so Stu Overby. So Stu, you can hear me because I know you're off mute. This is a good tool for public safety?
Yeah, in many ways I think it would be. Yeah, I was just saying, how you sort of market it more to public safety. Because going forward, I think even public safety has, as David talked about the bean counters, I mean, you know, they have people that are counting dollars as well. And so I think the tool would be very interesting to some.
No, but to answer your specific question, if you get like in the middle of it and you go, I need more information, can you save it and go back? I'd have to have Sarah to answer that question, but it's so quick, right? You could probably print what you have, go back, plug. I'm not sure whether you can save it and come back to it in a day or two. Okay,
yeah.
So there you go. There's your answer, Stu.
You know, everything, just like for those of you on the phone who have used CIVO to do any of your submitting, you know, requirements for licensing with us, it all lives up in the cloud. This is not something you need to download to your computer. You can be on your computer at work, put in some of the information. Heck, you could just put in your customer's name and hit save and have no data in the bottom of it. And the next time you log in, it'll be saved in there as long as you hit that save button. The way to clear it out, you just hit that reset button. It'll clear it all out. But you can log in from your computer at work, and then using the same login and username, log in from, you know, the Westin Hotel when you're on travel somewhere next week. So every time, as long as you hit save, if you don't have all the information you need and you realize as you're going through it, oh, wow, I forgot to get that, just hit save and move on and come back later.
And Sarah, on that too, with the 3 check boxes, you could have a generic commercial carrier or a cellular type solution loaded in there and just check or uncheck the box to add it into your scenario or take it out, and those numbers are going to sit there as long as you don't clear them out.
Yeah, and to that point, and going back to when we were talking about the general system scope at the top, because you've got those generic numbers, you wouldn't need to specifically go in there every time and edit the number of handhelds, because as people saw in the example, we changed it from 100 to 500. It's going to change each one of the systems and how they're comparing to each other. We have one question here about how you get access. Excuse me. So we had mentioned Premier, and Premier, just for people who don't know, Premier is a upgraded version of membership with EWA. You get a number of reports that help you with your business. We've included this in with Premier to do a value add for that upgrade of membership. It's if you're not a Premier member, it's $1,005 in addition to your dues per year. if you are not Premier and you're not interested in joining Premier and you want to access this tool, you do have to be a member. It is not something that we're making available to non-members. As Mark mentioned, this, we really want to increase that value proposition for our members. It'll be $300 a month, and that is for access for 5 users. So
unlimited
with
during that month, right?
Excuse me?
Unlimited during that month, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so for the, from the 1st of August until the, end of August, for those 5 people on your staff that we have provisioned to have access to the tool, they'll be able to use it as many times as they want during that month. And you would just let us know who the people are in your staff that need access, and we will, turn them on in our system to be able to have that.
Another question came in. Are you able to enter from Mr. Link? Are you able to enter different number of units over different years as opposed to the same number of units for additional years? I believe you can. I mean, I assume the question. I think they assume the question is you start with. I think you can add. I think you can add, like, year 1, I'm going to have 20 units, and the next I'm going to have 10 more. I think there's a capability and a drop down to how many additional units are added each year.
Yeah. Yeah, or replacing units,
yes.
like how many years you'd replace them and that kind of thing too.
Well, not even replace, but add.
Well, yeah, cost or add, either replace or add, either one. You could put them on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, and again, the other little factor we put in there was, if you return them, you get a rebate. You can add, you can do the projected rebate. I don't know, $50, so it lowers the cost of the new radios or the replacement radios in year 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 or whatever. We looked at that very carefully. We actually asked when do the normal trade-ins or rebates, when you turn in your old phones, it's somewhere like 5, 6, or 7 years. Was that correct, David? I know we spent time on that.
Yeah, it was like 4 or 5 years, I think it was. I mean,
right.
How long have you had? Maybe a bad question to ask you, Mark, but how long do you usually keep a cell phone before you get a new one?
2 years.
3, 4
years.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years, right? And that's why the model has to. And I have a really good rate, all you can eat at $71. But I mean, some of the plans are much more. And if you got a employee staff of like 300 people, and they all give them cell phones, it's a big number after a period of time.
Yep.
Yeah, and there's some intangible things too. Like we found that the biggest selling point for radios as opposed to cell phones when we go up in a comparison, like in a ambulance service type situation, is you don't want your ambulance drivers and your employees texting and messing with their phone while they're transporting patients, but they need communication. So you give them a two-way radio and they have the communication they need, and you can tell them to make sure they keep their cell phones turned off and out of the way while they're on duty. So those are big intangibles when you talk about this that separates the dollars and cents from the other part of the buying decision.
Good. Well, we don't have any more questions in the chat. One last chance if anybody on the line wanted to ask a question, and then we can go to any kind of closing comments. No? Okay. The only thing I wanted to say is, again, reach out to me with any questions that you might want to ask offline via email or phone. Either one's fine. Our website is there at the bottom. And after this conference call, we will be sending out an email to everybody that has a link to the recording. So you'll be able to see everything from our slideshow with the screenshots to our live presentation of the tool, and then recap of these questions. So if you do not get that, feel free to reach out to me, but everyone will be getting a copy of that at the end. If you need access right away, I'm here to help, so let us know. Mark, David, any final words from either of you two?
I would highly recommend that you get online and play with it and start to use it a little bit, because at first it can be like kind of a daunting task, or you might like big pushback. But once you get in there and see how easy it is to just change things and manipulate things to get new information, you may learn a thing or two also about the scenarios that you're proposing. So I would try to get the pre-sale engineers and the salespeople to work with it together.
One thing I want to note too, with you saying that, if anybody on the call right now thinks that there's somebody else at their association that would want to see this, or their organization that would want to see this, feel free to forward them the link that we'll send out with the recording. But I also want to offer that I can do a walkthrough for you with a live screen share and do a demo specifically for your staff. So if that's something you're considering before you want to jump in, just let me know. I'm happy to do that for individuals that request it. Otherwise, I think that we're all wrapped up.
Right. Thank you all for joining us today. You all have a lovely weekend, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all.